This is Distillation Dance number 4. And in this one, I'd actually like to start off with another definition. The word marginalize is a verb, which according to Merriam-Webster means to relegate to an unimportant or powerless position within a society or group. And they go so far as to throw a little "did you know" section in the bottom of the definition, in which they say that marginalized tells you how the figurative use of a word can take over the literal one. And it was used to describe the noun marginalia at some point, which meant marginal notes or embellishments, right? Meaning side notes, notes you'd write on the side and the margin. They weren't the actual content, but you would write those notes on the side, and those notes would tell you whether or not or how important something was. Whereas today we talk about the position of powerlessness of what we would call marginalized groups. Just interesting. So let's go to an imaginary playground. Let's leave the village for a moment. Let's go to an imaginary playground, right? And on this imaginary playground, the majority of the kids are there. It's their first day. And you've got the majority of kids, normal kids. Kids want to play around. Kids will play with anybody to begin with. It'll start off like that. And one of the kids has a birthmark on his face. It's no fault of his own. It's just a birthmark. It has no negative impacts on his health. But over time, there's a kid that comes in, and the kid doesn't really like the fact that the kid has a birthmark on his face, so he tells him he's scary, right? And he goes ahead and, the kid that tells the other kid that he's scary, he says, "You're scary, you can't play with my ball." And he's playing with his ball, playing with the other kids, and, the kid with the birthmark on his face wants to come in and play, and the kid who with the ball tells everybody, y'all shouldn't play with him because he's scary and his face looks different. And you're going, well, these are just kids. But here's an interesting thing that happens. Because the one kid determines that the other kid should be left out for the scariness of his face, and then threatens the other kids that, well, if you play with him, you can't play with me, and if you play with him, you can't play with my ball either. And in doing so, he now creates a situation in which the kid with the birthmark on his face, through no fault of his own, is now the subject of the bullying and the mean things that the kids will say, and the kids start calling him monster and, oh, we don't want to be around you. And some of the kids don't actually care that the other kid has a birthmark on his face. However, this is what happens within large enough groups. If everybody acts like they don't like one person, and you start to hang out with that person, you will be punished and treated like that very same person. This happens in playgrounds and school settings in which there's a bully and there's somebody who sticks up for the bullied kid. And then the person who sticks up for the bullied kid ends up being the target of the bullying themselves as well. Why is this? Because there's society and how the social creature hierarchy works. There's always someone at the top of the social hierarchy, and there's always somebody at the bottom. This allows there to be greater group cohesiveness and greater group unity because there is an enemy. Yes, that's right. There's an enemy or someone to direct the negative energy and negative attention of the group towards. And as this kid gets bullied day in and day out, nobody is willing to step up and protect this kid that's bullied because guess what? If you step up to protect him, you'll be bullied and punished too. And nobody wants to be left out. As human beings, we're social creatures. We started off, grouping together to fend off the ravages that would be the wildlife and the threats to our survival. So, if you were to be quote unquote left out, you would almost inevitably suffer because it's difficult for one person alone to gather all the resources they need for their survival on a day-to-day basis. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. To the point where we want so badly to not be left out or ostracized that we will commit all manner of atrocities against our fellow human beings. Now go ahead and think about this. If there was a village of people in Africa and this one person became an outcast from the village and he came upon a lion by himself, it would be very difficult for that one person to survive the lion encounter. Whereas when there are multiple people, they can corner the lion, they can chase off the lion, or any other such predator. This goes so far as to go into medieval culture where one of the number one things you could do to harm somebody just short of killing them yourself would be banishment. Because that banishment or exile would mean almost certain death for the person. So let's go back to this playground. This kid is bullied and, he asks his mom why he was born this way and why he can't just, rip the birthmark off his face. And the mom tells him that the birthmark is a part of him. And as long as the kids continue to believe that he's scary or, he's contagious, or as long as these kids continue to use him as the butt of all of their jokes, this also prevents them from seeing the big picture. And, as social animals, we tend not to see the big picture. This kid being the butt of all their jokes and not wanting to be punished for being friends with this kid changes the way they think. And they no longer think of the guy with the ball who is telling people they can't play with his ball if they play with this kid. They don't think of him as the bad guy. But if you look at the entire situation, the kid with the birthmark on his face is not at fault. But the guy with the ball that says, you can't play with my ball and you can't play with my ball, he's actually the biggest bully on the playground. And he's using his social capital by having the ball to propagate a tyranny of sorts. But because nobody wants to be left out, nobody will stand against him. I will present to you the interesting, you may go, yeah, this is just the playground. That doesn't really matter, but it does. It does. I will present to you the case study of an entire country. That's right, an entire country in whom this playground philosophy applies. We look into the Caribbean country of Haiti. And yes, this country is one of those marginalized groups. You may say, no, Haiti has nothing wrong with it. They're just a poor country. And then I present to you the question, why are they poor? Why? Haiti and the Dominican Republic are two countries on the same island. However, if you look up the math on it as of 2020, Google will show you that the GDP of Haiti is a little over 13 billion, whereas the GDP of the Dominican Republic on the very same island is 78 billion. Now, stop, think, do some math. What is it that makes Haiti worth 1/6? Yes, that's 1/6. That's 16-17% of the value of the Dominican Republic. Now let me outline this for you. These two countries are on the same island. These two countries have access to very similar economic and ecological resources. Well, I said economic. That would be incorrect. Economic is not the right word. Ecological resources, they have human capital. They have access to the ocean very similarly. They have pretty much the same exact location in a global scale. Location, the thing that differs between them, the reason why Haiti is not as wealthy as the Dominican Republic, goes back to the times of slavery. Slavery in Haiti during the times of slavery, Haiti had the first successful slave revolt. That's correct. They overthrew the people that were enslaving them on that section of the island. They overthrew the French who were enslaving them. There were several people known for that. Toussaint Louverture, it's an interesting case study because they succeeded in freeing themselves from their European overlords. But what this caused, yes, this is a free country, but they caused the European overlords to fear them. And because of this, they prohibited trade with Haiti compared to the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic was still under Spanish control and still had whatever they had going on regarding slavery and whatnot, but they prohibited trade with Haiti because if the word got out that they had successfully repelled their European overlords, it would inspire many other slaves to revolt because there had been success. I also personally believe that the Europeans who were responsible for enslaving and trafficking the people to Haiti, they also wanted so badly to spite them because they had gotten beaten. Imagine the one kid on the playground with the birthmark getting sick and tired of the abuse and pounding the face in of the bully. Just one time. And then the bully tells all the other kids how scary the one with the birthmark is, that he's a demon and you shouldn't even go near him because what happened to me will happen to you. And if you even get close to him, you won't be able to play with my ball. It's interesting. Now, you may think this is historical. Haiti is a thing of the past. Well, this is interesting that you say that because even to this day, that disparity between Haiti and the Dominican Republic still stands. And even to this day, Haiti was left out from a lot of the advances during the Industrial Revolution, meaning that while other island countries were getting factories and the ability to grow economically via trade, they were left out. They were not allowed to play with the ball or the bucket, if you want to call it that. Yes, the bucket. And you may think, okay, well, this is Haiti. It doesn't really apply across the world. But it does. This playground logic in which the bully tells everybody who gets to play what, and if you don't do as I say, you'll be left out. In today's world, the marginalized groups, they really, their value to the rest of the world, I won't even say it's a sixth of their neighbors. In this very country, within the past 5 years, there was a man pulled out of his vehicle at gunpoint, laid face down on the ground with someone's foot on their neck until he died. And no one dared to jump in to protect him. As a matter of fact, if you did try to jump in to protect him, you would be liable to get shot or bullied or taken to jail, or you see the picture. Nobody stepped in to protect this man, simply because he was one of those marginalized groups. And the bully, whether it be the police or, the overall social structure, you could even say psychologically there was a bit of bystander effect going on, right? But the fact that it was allowed to happen, and it wasn't 3 minutes, 5 minutes, it was longer than 8 minutes. Till this man died of oxygen deprivation. All because he had a birthmark on his face. Stop, think, and understand.